All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my good buddy Greg Kaufmann. Greg is a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress and the editor of the new site Talk Poverty, which you can find at talkpoverty.org. You can also find him on Twitter at Greg Kaufmann. Greg, thank you so much for being on the show again.
It's always great to talk to you, Matt.
All right, so Greg, I got to admit, buddy, you haven't been on in a little while. You left The Nation, who you're writing for regularly, but you actually have a new project, like we were saying, and I'm super excited about it. Let's begin by having you lay it out for us. Tell us, what exactly is Talk Poverty?
Yeah, I'd love to tell you about it. And let me just tell you, Matt, I am actually still writing for The Nation once a month starting in June. So it wasn't a bad breakup or anything like that. Basically what happened was after 2 years of covering poverty full-time for The Nation, I just started feeling like, there aren't that many of us out there committed to covering poverty in an ongoing, authentic way. Like, you definitely do on your show. And I'm not saying there aren't any, but there aren't enough of us. And there's so many stories that need to be told. And so I just really felt strongly that, you know what? People in poverty or at risk of falling into poverty and people who are working on poverty every day, I really feel like they can tell their own stories and that we should create a site to do that, to feature their stories, whether they write them or do videos or audio. And I also thought, we need a site that people can read those stories, but also get involved with organizations. So at talkpoverty.org, we also have lists of national and local organizations broken down by state, broken down by issue. There are so many misunderstandings about statistics, like what's the poverty level, for example. Like people think it's like 40,000. It's like 18,000 for a family of three. Anyway, so we have statistics and interactive data to try to correct the misinformation. So really, a lot of the things that we did at The Nation in the blog, I tried to put into this site, but really featuring the stories of people living and working on poverty themselves primarily. Yep.
Yeah, no, and it's so needed. Again, like we've talked about, every time you were on the show in the past, like for one, I think a lot of just American politics, politicians never want to talk about the poor. They always talk about the middle class, which again, what's so, sad about that is like what actually is the middle class in America is shrinking further and further, so much so that it like hardly ever, it doesn't exist that much anymore. Right. And so much more are Americans actually classify as the working poor, right, if they're lucky enough to even have a job to begin with. And so actually taking that approach and saying, the problem isn't necessarily just the middle class. It's actually poverty in the United States and growing poverty that grows, essentially every day in this country. And we need to actually focus on that instead of this sort of the myth of the middle class in America that sadly has gone the way of from most of the dinosaurs. Only there's a few dinosaurs still kind of roaming around.
No, you're right. And the number I think about a lot, even though it's not official poverty, is the 106 million Americans. So we're talking about more than 1 in 3 Americans who live below twice the poverty line. So they're living on less than about $36,000, $37,000 for a family of 3. So, you might not call that poverty. Well, we don't call it poverty by our official measure, but what it does mean is these are more than 1 in 3 Americans having trouble affording the basics, to be able to pay for healthcare, housing, education, have retirement savings. And also they're just one significant hardship away from poverty. So what I think about in my work, and kind of going to what you said in terms of a shrinking middle class is that, more than 1 in 3 Americans are either in poverty or at risk of being in poverty soon. So that's really the world we're trying to focus on. And you mentioned how politicians like to talk about the middle class. We had a great post from former Governor Ted Strickland, who runs the Center for American Progress Action Fund here. Anyway, he grew up very poor, and he writes about how he learned from that experience, how it informs his public service, and also he wrote very candidly about how hard it is. Even he himself found himself talking about the middle class, and not that you shouldn't talk about the middle class, but not enough about poverty. So it was a really good post, and he has a call to action. He's basically saying progressives need to look more at the labor movement and the gains we made, like for his family to get out of poverty. It was really the labor movement, and that whether it's the labor movement or some other form of collective action, that's really where we need to be focusing our attention.
Again, I'm talking to my friend Greg Kaufmann, the editor of the new site Talk Poverty. You can find it at talkpoverty.org. Let's delve into some of the statistics, though, because actually, one of the things I even remember, like one of the times you were on before, and actually I think more than once, we actually talked about the need to go on offense and actually like not just try to defend, what's left of Social Security, not just defend food stamps, which we have to do, but to actually like kind of try to shift the narrative and turn it around and actually go on offense. One of the things that you have on the site is something called Half in 10. So tell us, what exactly is Half in 10?
Yeah, so Half in 10 is the partner organization of TalkPoverty.org, and they're a C4 organization with an ambitious campaign to reduce poverty by half over 10 years. And people say, oh, that's crazy or whatever. But you know what? We did it as recently as between 1964 and 1973. And so, we really make no apologies for that. One of the reasons this project was such a good fit with that campaign. I mean, even though we're separate, we're a C3, they're a C4, but so that might mean nothing to your listeners, but and I'm babbling. So anyway, but the point is, the Half in 10 campaign has always used personal stories to try to make the debate less abstract and let people tell their own stories so that they can't just be demonized. And we saw during the War on Poverty debate, for instance, people were writing the Half in 10 campaign about how the safety net had benefited them, helped them out during periods of their life, and allowed them to find stability. And some of them have stability now and have moved on from that assistance. But they had those being read into the congressional record by congressmen. They had Hill visits from some of their contributors. So they've really understood the importance of personal story as part of the drive to get support for an ambitious goal like reducing poverty by half over 10 years.